Hey guys, what is up? My name is Kaylee. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming at you with my June wrap-up. In June I read 9 novels. That's it. No graphic novels, no manga, just 9 novels. Pretty good. I normally hit about 15, but that's because I read a lot of graphic novels. It was a little bit of a slower month, but I got some big ones done. I participated in the summerathon and read 3 books in that week, so that was the best week of the entire month. Let's get into what I read and how I rated them. It was a pretty decent reading month. I had 2 3 stars, 5 4 stars, and 2 5 stars. That is correct. So I read some really, really great stuff and some really disappointing stuff, but nothing that was absolutely terrible. My first 3-star of the month, which was more of like a 2.5 3 stars, so I guess it was not that great, but that is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This is a book about a girl who at the end of the school year, I believe she is a junior in high school, they have like an end of the year bonfire and some blood magic happens at the bonfire. She is a witch, not a blood witch, but a witch, and has a coven. It takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, and she has had a past experience run-in with a blood witch that her family doesn't know about. And so she's terrified and tells them and her coven, and they think she's lying. There's no way there could be a blood witch. And it's the grappling of trying to save her town / her coven, but also she's dealing with an ex-girlfriend of hers that won't leave her alone even though the ex-girlfriend's dating someone else. It got really muddled. One of my main problems with it is that the relationship with the ex-girlfriend was really, really toxic. The ex-girlfriend kept trying to bring the main character, so Hannah and Veronica. So Hannah is the main character and Veronica's the ex-girlfriend. And Veronica, while she's dating another girl, keeps trying to reignite their relationship. She keeps trying to kiss her, and when Hannah says no, Veronica keeps going, saying no, I think you want to be with me, we need a second chance, yada yada. And it just really wigged me out. There's not a pass just because they're young. I don't know. It wasn't a great storyline, especially because they both start dating other people. The witch thing could have been cool, but I don't know a whole lot about witch practices and witchcraft, so I can't speak to whether it was well represented in this book. But it was definitely one of those, the character's in the wrong place at the wrong time consistently, and no one seems to believe that something more is happening. They just keep yelling at this girl that previously didn't seem to be a problematic child. And I just felt like it was one of those books that falls into the category of if an adult had just done their job and stepped in when the help was sought for, the plot wouldn't have happened. So anyway, I don't know. It was just kind of messy in my opinion, but it is, I believe, a debut novel. And it sounds like it's going to be a series. If you look it up on Goodreads, it is #1. And it ends on a note enough that there could be more, but it doesn't have to necessarily. I don't know. My initial reaction is pass. Next is another 3-star. I expected to 3-star it. I don't think that my expectations weighed into giving it a 3-star. I didn't read this and go, I don't think I'm gonna like it, so I'm not liking it. I just really don't think this author is for me, and that is The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I 3-starred The Kiss Quotient too. I think that her way of telling stories is just not my style. Both books kind of progress through the plot based on an inability to communicate efficiently, and based on the ages of the people in the books that she wrote, I just don't really buy it. So this is a story about a woman from Vietnam who is picked up by this guy's mother who's visiting Vietnam, and she offers the girl, who ends up going by Esmeralda, not money, but she basically flies her to California to try and woo her son into marrying him. She wants Esmeralda to convince her son Kai to marry her by the end of the summer. So it's the beginning of the summer. She has a couple months to do this. She wants her son to fall in love with this girl. She'll fly her out to California, all expenses paid, and if she gets him to marry her, then she can stay, obviously. She'll have her green card. So it's a love story. And they do, just like in the Kiss Quotient, they do fall in love, but like, they don't communicate at all. And yet again, we had to have like a third party come in and be like, this is what's happening, this is how it is, can you guys just understand that this is what's happening? And I'm like, bro, like they're like almost 30, I think, and I don't know a single adult my age that has to have another person step in to be like, bro, you love her, you know that? She loves you, you know that? Now, what I will say is that both books that Helen Huang has written has representation for autism, and both characters with autism are very different in where they fall on the spectrum. I can appreciate that a lot. I really liked how most of the time how Kai was represented. He had a thing, his was very sensory based, whereas I would say that Stella in the Kiss Quotient was a lot more social based. His was sensory based, so there's like a lot of description on how he likes to be touched, learning how to appropriately touch him so it doesn't feel bad to him. So I liked that aspect of it. But generally speaking, the plot also like was very convenient and wrapped up in a way that I was like, this also would never happen. In a million fucking years, the stars would never align like this. It's just not my bag. It was okay. I almost at like 40% was like, do I want to continue? So that's never really a good sign, is it? But I still think that it was not the worst book I read this month. So if you liked The Kiss Quotient, you might like this. Next up is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I gave this a 4-star. It's like a 3.5, 4-star for me. My buddy read this with Brianna over at Coffee Books and Bullet Journals. I'll link her down below. This is a story about a girl who had a baby at 15. She's still in high school. It's her senior year. Her mother is dead. Her father kind of abandoned her. So she lives with her grandmother who raised her, and now her grandma's helping raise her daughter with her. It's her senior year, so she's like thinking about college and what she's going to do with herself and how she's going to juggle motherhood and an education or a job and still be able to like be herself. She's really into cooking, so she joins a culinary class as an elective her senior year, and that's basically the story. It's her trying to become herself through culinary arts and the relationship she can form with people in the high school with her. I really liked her friendship with her best friend. I like a story where best friends actually have each other's back and care about each other and not like catty girl on girl hate stuff. And I think this book did a really good job of that. The two characters really had each other's backs. There is a little bit of a romance in here, but I really appreciated that romance too. And if you know me, if you're new here, I'm not really big on love stories in a book unless they're done well. They have to be like believable. This was a cute build-up. I liked it, but I did think that a lot of what happened to her, especially as that you reach the climax of the story, was all very convenient. The same thing I said about the bride test, like it just, too much of it was too cookie cutter in the end. And I mean, I have kids, so I know how hard it is to be a mother, and that's with support. And as like an older, I'm not a teenager, and I wasn't a teenager when I had kids. My sister was a teenager when she had her first kid, and I know how hard it was, and I just don't think it was fully, things just happened too well in the end. But it was good. The writing is I love Elizabeth Acevedo's voice. The Poet X was one of my favorite books of last year. This is verse, so it's not, or this is prose, so it's not told in poems, but they are very, very, very short chapters, like 2 to 5 pages total. So it does read very fast, which is a benefit for me when I'm using a book in a readathon. My next 4-star read is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Just getting all my book of the month books out of the way, I guess. This book is a sci-fi contemporary novel about a girl who one night walking home in New York, she runs into this statue. She calls her friend to come film it. They post it to his YouTube and become an overnight sensation because they're the first to discover this new weird statue that has landed in like 60-something other cities around the world. And the story is basically the breakdown of like figuring out what the statue is, or the statues are, their purpose, where they came from, while the main character April May has to deal with the sudden onslaught of celebrityism. What's the word I'm looking for? Of being a celebrity. And I really, really like how that aspect was tackled. Her growing in fame rapidly and what it did to her, and how she felt like she had to go and always be on top of things, ahead of things, what it did to her psychologically and physically. I really like that, and I think that a lot of that was because Hank Green is kind of an online celebrity as well as an author now, just like his brother, so he has kind of an idea of what it is to become internet famous. I liked the sci-fi storyline. My biggest complaint in the whole book is that I didn't like April May. I just didn't like her character. I thought she kind of falls into the manic pixie dream girl category, and that like she's a badass and she's sarcastic and like, you know, fuck everyone, I do what I want type thing, but like, I don't know, in the beginning it was kind of quirky, but then like her quirkiness just kind of took a toll, and she didn't do anything nice by anyone, it felt like, throughout the whole book. She just made really bad choices, which I think is fine, but like she was like 21 through 23 or 4 in this novel, because a lot of time passes, and I just think that she was not really growing as a character. Now, I did see that this is marked as #1 on Goodreads, so there might be more, and there's a possibility that she'll redeem herself as a character. I don't know, but I do think that some of the side characters were a lot more palatable, I guess I would say. So that's where really the 1 star comes off, is just, I didn't like the main character, and you're with her the whole book, so. But otherwise, really, really strong debut. The hype is worthwhile, for me anyway. It worked out. Solid 4 star. My next 4 star was an impromptu library haul because Chelsea over at Chelsea Darling Reads talked about it, and she said that it was one of the most fucked up things she'd ever read, and she made her boyfriend read it, and he said the same thing, and nothing screams like get the book now more than telling me that it's a super fucked up book. That is Confessions by Kanae Minato. This is originally written in Japanese and translated to English. This is a very weird story. Now, it was definitely fucked up, but like, it didn't hit me, I guess, the same way as I expected it to, but it is a story, it's like a revenge story, I'll say. It's about a teacher whose daughter, who's 4, dies, and it's ruled an accident, but she knows that someone killed her. And that someone is one of her students. So the story starts out with her explaining to the class that 2 of the students are responsible for her daughter's death. She won't say who it is, and the fallout from that conversation, it goes on for like the next year, what happens to the characters and a couple side characters based on the accusation. It was definitely weird. I would say there's a lot of trigger warnings for like violence and suicide, and what else would I say? There's a lot of like blasé talk about AIDS, so there's definitely those subject matters alone are pretty taboo, which is what really this book centers around. So I would say if any of those things don't sound good to you, like, don't read it, but it is a really, really quick read, a revenge story, one that I won't forget. I still think about it almost every day since I read it. Solid 4 star. My only complaint, I guess, is just how, I don't know how to say this because I don't want to spoil it, but the way it all plays out, I feel like there would have been a lot more repercussion for one of the things that a character does, and it like stuck with me for a while. So if you've read it, you might know what I'm talking about, and we can talk about it, but I don't want to give anything away for anybody who hasn't read it and is intrigued by this plot. But I really did like it. I don't know if she's written more. If she does, I want to look into it, but I liked it a lot. My next 4-star read was so close to a 5-star, and I was so looking forward to it, and I'm still really excited about the sequel coming out, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I honestly cannot believe this is a debut novel. It is a very violent fantasy that has a lot of political intrigue and war, and it's about a girl named Rin who wants to get out of the situation she's in because she's like an adopted child to some opium sellers, drug dealers essentially, and they're gonna sell her off to get married, but she doesn't want that. So the only way to not do that is to get into this very prestigious and hard to get into school where you train to be an assassin. She gets in. So that's as far as I'll tell you plot-wise, because then you go through the school and then there's the war, and I really, really, really was loving it. 5-star up until the war started, and then I feel like that drug for a long time. It could have been a little more concise in the war. It could have been paced a little bit better, I think. That was really what it comes down to, is the pacing. But the characters are really great. Like, Rin makes the right kinds of wrong decisions. She's just as confused as I think anyone would be in the situation she's in. The side characters are amazing and individual, and one of her best friends from the school, I believe it's pronounced Kitty, might be just Kitty, but really, really enjoyed it. Really, really looking forward to the Dragon Republic, which comes out in August, and I think it's worth picking up. If you have it and you've been waiting on it like I did, like I owned this for a year, and I finally read it, worth it. That was my final 4 stars, so now we're on to 5 stars, and my first of 2 5 stars is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. I had high expectations going in because 2 of the booktubers that I watch that have very similar tastes to me, which are Jess from Jess Reads Books and Cody from Cody's Book Corner, both loved this a lot, and I was no exception. This was fun and fast-paced, and the characters were, it's impossible to not love each individual character in this band of heroes. So it's about a band of men that are like older now, they're like, I believe in their 50s. They used to be mercenaries, like a group of mercenaries that are very famous, and one of them needs the band to get back together to go save his daughter. The main character, Clay, is kind of not like necessarily the leader, but he's the person in the band that everyone will come behind, and when he asks for it, they call, you know, when he calls, they come. How am I saying this? You know what I mean. You know what I mean. They all listen to him. So they go on this adventure, and I got a lot of like Hobbit vibes from it, because they're going through a lot of woods and they deal with a lot of various obstacles that they have to overcome, all to get to one location. So that's where the Hobbit vibes come in. But it's funny, like I laughed out loud so much through this book. There's like a whole scene where I was just dying, and I don't laugh out loud at books very often, but this one had me. Some of the characters are just straight up funny, but it also, you care about them. So it's not just like it's not just a humor book. You actually genuinely feel for these characters and you want them to do well. It's rare that I go through a book and think, like, I really hope no one dies in this. And I felt that way through this whole book. So that says a lot. The sequel, which I believe is more of a companion novel than a sequel, is called Bloody Rose, and I don't own it, but when I do get my hands on it eventually, I will read it. I'm not really rushing to, I got a lot on my plate, but it is on the docket eventually. 5 stars. And last but not least, my favorite book of the month. I really expected it to be, and it was. And I expected it to be because my favorite book of last year is from the same author, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. If you're new here, I love mythology. I love reading retellings of mythology. Sign me up. This was no different. This is a story about Achilles, and it's a love story about him and Patroclus, who was also a prince. So Achilles is a prince and Patroclus is a prince, but he gets exiled and he ends up with Achilles, and they become companions and they fall in love. And if you're familiar with mythology, you know the story of Achilles is not a happy one, so it's a sad love story, but there's just something about the way that Madeline Miller writes that even when it's slow, I'm like so invested in it. And I think that a lot of people are hit or miss with Madeline Miller in Circe and in The Song of Achilles because of that. Mythology is a lot slower paced, I think, just generally speaking. So if you like mythology and you like lyrical writing, I can't see you not liking this or Circe, but know that it is a little bit slower. The words are a lot more lyrically put on the page, so the pacing is a little bit, you know, I'm going to use the word slow again. But if that sounds up your alley and you like a queer love story, Which reminds me, I'm off camera. All of the books with the exception of, I believe, The Poppy War and Confessions, 2 or 3 of the 9 books. So I think I read about 66+% of the books in June were had queer representation in it, which had been my ultimate goal in the month, was to read almost all queer books. But The Poppy War was one that carried over from May, so I wouldn't count that. Confessions is a last minute pickup, and I knew that The Bride Test was going to be on my TBR beforehand, but what can you do? I think that that's pretty great. I have a lot more books, obviously, with queer representation in it that I would like to have gotten to, but such is life. I did not get to the 2 V.E. Schwab books that were on my TBR, but I can't complain about 9 full novels. So yeah, so that's it for me. That is my June wrap-up. It was a good reading month. I think this month will be a good reading month. I think August is going to be a very stressful but amazing reading month with the Newts coming up. I can't wait to put that TBR together. I have to read 10 books minimum, 15 books maximum. It's gonna be a thing. In any case, let me know if you read any of these books and what you think of them. Are there any on the TBR, on your TBR that I read this month? Let me know. Let's chat. That's it for me, guys. Like if you like this video, subscribe if you are new here and would like to see more content from me. All my social media links will be down below. You can find me on Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye!